Hello, welcome to the Inside the Birds pregame show. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and joining us as always is Greg Cosell. It's just a few days after Christmas, and the Eagles hope today is Clinchmas for them as they face
As
the Dallas Cowboys at the link.
opposed to Grinchmas?
It could be if they don't win, Greg.
Oh, wow.
It
Wow.
will be not good if the Eagles win because let me lay it out for you guys. The Eagles are 12 and 3 after having their 10-game win streak snapped last Sunday and their 36-33 loss to the Commanders. They can clinch the NFC East today with a win or a Commanders loss to the Falcons. The Cowboys, we know, have been eliminated from playoff contention, but they have won 4 of their last 5, so they come to South Philly at 7 and 8. But it's hard to believe this. If the Eagles don't win today and don't win their season finale against the Giants, and the Commanders finish 2 and 0 against the Falcons and Cowboys, then it would be the Commanders winning the NFC East. Adam, if ever a time to just take care of business, it's right today here against the Dallas Cowboys. I know the fans would love that.
Yeah, the Eagles' magic number technically is point 0.5 because they just
Oh,
need
point five, right.
they need a tie for those people who love ties. You and I don't like ties, and other people don't like them. But the bottom line is yes, it is. Weather looks like it's got a chance to clear up today. We'll cross our fingers. But it's the backup quarterback ball, and boy, do we look forward to it.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of those backup quarterback bowls between the Eagles and the Cowboys over the last few years. Greg, the Cowboys, they were already eliminated from the playoffs last week before they took the field against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and they still came out with a 26-24 win
Yeah.
over a team that at that moment was in first place of the NFC South. So they're clearly playing hard. Again, winners of 4 of their last 5. What has stood out about them at all in their better play here, winning 4 of the last 5?
Offensively, I'd say two things. I'd say number one, the quarterback, Cooper Rush, has clearly gotten incrementally better and more comfortable as these games have gone on. Again, I'm not suggesting he's now a great quarterback, and he could certainly today come in and have a poor game, and that would make it seem like, well, he's just a backup quarterback, which he probably is when all's said and done. But he certainly has played well. I mean, last week against the Bucks, he handled their blitzes extremely well, and he was terrific on third down. And I'd say the other thing that has stood out offensively, even though it wasn't the case against the Bucks, is prior to that, Rico Dowdle had really become a factor in the run game. They had developed a really meaningful run game. In the 4 weeks prior to last, I guess that game was Sunday night, correct? Yes, prior
Yes.
to last Sunday night, he was the second leading rusher in the NFL behind Saquon Barkley in a 4 week stretch
Hmm.
prior to last weekend. So they'd actually developed a pretty consistent run game, and he had 14 rushes of 10 plus yards in uh, those 3 previous games, prior to last week. So I mean, it's they look. Let's keep one thing in mind. And again, we're not sitting here saying the Cowboys are a great team, but they're a bad special teams play away from being 5-0 in their last 5 games.
Yep, absolutely. A muff punt against the Bengals that turned into a Bengals touchdown is the difference in that game, or else, correct, they would have been 5 and 0 in their last 5. Now they're going to need to rely on Rico Dowdle and whoever else even more today, as they will also, just like the Eagles, they'll also be without a major
Yeah.
offensive weapon. And we're going to get into that right now as we get into the injury situation. Here it is for the Eagles. We know that Jalen Hurts will miss his first start from this season from a concussion. Kenny Pickett will fill in. The offense is also going to be missing Dallas Goedert. He is out for the 4th time in 4 games from being on injured reserve. We'll see if he can get into the practice window in the next week or what the Eagles want to do with him going forward. They'll also be without their kick returner and their punt returner. Will Shipley, the rookie running back who is a kickoff returner, is out from a concussion, and Britton Covey remains out. Punt returner slash wide receiver with a neck injury. He has been out since the Ravens game in week 13. And last but not least, Nakobe Dean, very banged up with his abdomen injury. So look for veteran Oren Burks to be ready for action today. But, obviously, Kenny Pickett gets thrust into the spotlight here. And without Dallas Goedert, the Eagles had probably should hope to get some better play, especially some blocking out of their tight ends. Greg, that was an issue last week with Alcantara and Uzama. Fair to say?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we discussed this throughout the week that the tight ends, did not block particularly well in the run game. And as I mentioned, and the film showed, and it was certainly validated, as Adam had indicated, by Jordan Mailata, that in the second half of that game, their offensive line did not play very well in run blocking. It was probably their worst performance of the season in the second half. So, but normally when you have good players and you're good at something and you have been over a sustaining period of time, normally you come back the next game and do that well. That's what I found, through my experience. I'd be surprised, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say Barkley's going to run for 250, but I'd be surprised if their O-line did not play well this week.
Sure. Adam and I talked on the pod last year. We remember a couple of games, Jets game, for example, where the Eagles offensive line looked mortal. And then you worried about it, but then they would bounce back and
Sure.
have a big game. Adam, I want to talk special teams though. No Will Shipley, no Britton Covey. So that means Cooper DeJean likely to continue to be the punt returner, much to the dismay of Vic Fangio. Kickoff return. Kenny Gainwell, you think here, or do the Eagles, in your mind, maybe want to use Isaiah Rodgers there? You usually have two guys back now anyway with the new format, right?
Yes, and they've split those. Both guys have had work there. Gainwell is an aggressive returner. There's no doubt. Rodgers is the third corner. He does return kickoffs, and that was one of the advantages they had when they had Rodgers in the offseason program. I remember seeing him in OTAs return kicks with Gainwell and Will Shipley, who you mentioned, and they kind of settled in all three. They'd rotate him. But the big thing for Shipley is really on kickoffs, because Kenny Gainwell is the clear number 2 back, is that Shipley also is a coverage player in special teams. He's really fast, and they want to have that. And quite frankly, other than Braden Mann's awful kickoffs last week, not having Shipley's speed downfield, that was a factor.
Yeah, and by the way, on that note, we do know that in practice this week, Jake Elliott was practicing some of the kickoffs ahead of Braden Mann, so maybe even a switch on that. These division games, these games you need to win, special teams becomes very important. You want to be tip-top and make sure everything is fully operational. Let's talk about the Cowboys, because they said, we'll see you, Eagles, the Jalen Hurts, and we'll raise you a CeeDee Lamb. He has been shut down for the rest of the season with a shoulder sprain in the AC joint. He was playing through it, but obviously with the Cowboys out, decision was made to keep him sidelined. And with him on the sideline, that is 101 catches, 1,194 yards, and 6 touchdowns that Dallas will not have. Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert will likely see the most wide receiver snaps for them. Also look for rookie Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri State, rival of Clay Harbor's Missouri State, to get some run. That's right. And then, of course, the Cowboys continue to be without a bunch of guys on IR, Zach Martin, DeMarcus Lawrence, their edge, and cornerback Trayvon Diggs. So that is some serious star power they're missing there. They've gotten rookie right guard Brock Huffman filling in there for Zach Martin. Veteran Amani Owarie filling in a cornerback for Diggs, and of course the veteran Chauncey Golston filling in for Lawrence on the D-line. Adam?
Amani Owarie, by the way, he got hurt late in practice on Thursday. He is out.
Oh, my fault.
Out.
I did not. I missed that. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. They are so thin at corner. So I know, Greg, you and I and Jeff talked about Kalen Carson a long time ago. He looks like he'll be starting. What do you remember about Kalen Carson?
Yeah, I kind of liked Carson coming out of Wake Forest. He struggled early in this season, which was why he was sort of put on the shelf, as it were. And now we'll see, after that happened, and he hasn't really been playing much at all, where he stands. I thought he had a chance. Again, he was, I think, a 5th-round pick, so I didn't think he'd step right in and be a starting corner, and that kind of happened because of all their injuries at corner. Obviously, Bland didn't start the season. He didn't play the first, 7 or 8 games. So Carson was forced to play. And, he wasn't quite ready. He had some good snaps, some bad snaps, and obviously they felt that he wasn't ready. But now, he's back out there. Who's still I think he's on the roster too. Don't they have Andrew Booth on their roster?
They did earlier this season. I will look to see if he is still there.
I thought he was on their roster, and he was.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. In fact, I saw him get snaps. He actually played.
Yeah,
right. I don't think he's with the team anymore, though. I thought that.
They might have gotten rid
on from him. Yeah,
I thought they might have cut him. But here's the point, though.
And it's possible they did. I don't know, but I mean, boy, he was a 2nd-round pick, and a lot of people had high hopes for him.
My fault. He is still on the team. He is a backup left corner. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, he'll have to play. He's going to have to play.
So yeah, I mean, he could get snaps.
And Steve, this kid CJ Goodwin, who they signed off the Bengals practice squad. So yeah, Jeff.
CJ Goodwin has been in the league for quite a while.
Yes.
He's at times played corner snaps, but he's really a special teams player.
Well, not only is he only a special teams player, he's been in the league. Holy smokes, it's 2014.
Yeah, I
Wow.
know. He's been in the league a long time.
Out of that not so football powerhouse, Cal of PA.
All right, so Cowboys clearly banged up in the secondary, and we'll discuss how that impacts the Eagles' offense and their plan to attack as we get into the matchups. I do want to start with the Eagles' offense against this Cowboys defense, of course, because we're going to get our first extended, prolonged look at Kenny Pickett. Adam, I'm a little surprised, not a lot surprised, because I know how the outside can really get frustrated at times very easily, the fans and stuff. But there was almost no mercy for Kenny Pickett, despite the fact that the Eagles scored 33 points in that loss. And I feel like there's not a lot of optimism from Eagles fans about Kenny Pickett, but there should be a difference in play, you would think, when you have an entire week of practice with the first team offensive line, with the first team weapons, first team running back, all of that. I would expect a different Kenny Pickett today.
Oh yeah, look, because he's really never worked with the first team offense, and they have that developmental period after practice to get reps as well, which is important, by the way. But seeing the spin off, the way he throws the football is really, really key. That'll certainly help. Cadence, all of that, obviously calling the play, a lot goes into it. And now the other thing is with Pickett's rib injury today, like they got to see how he throws the ball. They had to see that in practice, how well he could drive the football. He's starting, and Tanner McKee will be the backup. Ian Book will be an inactive third quarterback. But the bottom line is Pickett's got to be able to throw the football. Like they're gonna at some point they have to throw it. Now, based on what happened last week, you would think because Washington keyed on what they were trying to do, and based on what we just outlined, how bad off the Cowboys are at corner with all the injuries, this might be a good time to throw the football anyway.
You would think so, especially with those injuries, and maybe even to loosen up whatever defense, whatever Mike Zimmer's planning to throw at Kenny Pickett, because you would think, Greg, that the run game this week around might be a little bit more impactful based on how the Eagles want to go and attack this Cowboys defense.
Well, I think with Pickett, number one, they're going to look to run the football. And yeah, clearly that's their foundation anyway. But as Adam said, you do have to throw it at times. It'll be interesting to see proactively when they throw it, the kinds of throws they ask Pickett to make. And I think that's what I'll be looking for is when they choose to throw it, if it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, those kinds of down and distances where you're choosing to throw it, you're not forced to throw it. I'd be very curious to see, what kind of route concepts and what kind of throws they ask Pickett to make. Pickett's a quarterback that needs to be well protected. He is a technique fundamental quarterback in that he needs everything to be right. He needs to have the ball carriage proper, where he's holding the ball. I'm holding a little basketball, by the way. He needs all that to be right. He needs his footwork to be right. He needs a firm base. He needs his balance. He can't really throw the ball off balance. So he needs all that to be working in order to deliver the football properly.
Greg, arm strength has always been a question about Kenny Pickett, even going back to his days at Pitt. However, going back to his days at Pitt, especially when he had Jordan Addison to throw to before Jordan went off to USC, his numbers were pretty good, and he made a lot of good downfield throws. Is he just the type of quarterback that needs to be comfortable and in rhythm and have the feet set to make the throws?
Yes, and he had a great year his last year at Pitt, obviously, and which is the reason I watched that tape in great detail. I also watched his tape in previous years, so I saw an incremental development over the years. But that last year at Pitt, I truly believed he could be a quality starter in the NFL. Again, not a top 5, top 6 guy, but a guy you could line up and play with, assuming other factors. It's funny, as you guys probably know, I do Colin Cowherd every week, and Cowherd, talks about a lot of quarterbacks, as if quarterbacks. Well, if this works, if they have this, if they have this. And I said to Colin, Colin, how many quarterbacks aren't if quarterbacks? You might be able to name 3 or 4 tops. Maybe it's Lamar, it's Allen, it's Mahomes, it's Burrow. Maybe I'm missing one more, but pretty much every quarterback is an if quarterback that
Right.
needs something beyond just, hey, I can, go out there and on a given day be the guy that makes it all work, So he certainly is that guy. But you're right, Jeff. He needs a firm base. He needs to be on balance. He needs the pocket to be clean. He needs the interior of the O-line, which controls the depth of the pocket, to be really good. So he has room to step and throw.
Yeah, and that's why it wouldn't shock me. I do think the Eagles, I think we all think that foundationally they'll be about their run game. They're going to get Saquon Barkley involved. Dallas has
Yep.
struggled all year to stop the run, but I do feel like you'll probably see a concerted effort by Kellen Moore and the offensive coaching staff to get Kenny Pickett in a nice rhythm early, probably with some short stuff
I would
to
agree.
get the feet set, to get the rhythm going, and then see if they can open it up as the game goes by. Because if the Eagles really want to take advantage, Adam, of the secondary issues with AJ Brown, they're going to want to see if Kenny eventually can push it down the numbers like Jalen does and get him deep outside.
And
Yeah,
just
and
Adam,
that's
before you jump in, I'm sorry,
yeah.
just to play off you, Jeff. I remember talking to Phil Simms, who's a good friend of mine, and we talked ball, and telling me years ago, the worst thing you want as a quarterback is for your first throws to be 3rd and 9 and 3rd and 8. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
worst thing you
Yeah.
want.
Great point.
You want, because it's just too hard. You never feel comfortable doing that. So, Jeff, I think your point's a good one. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, no,
Well,
and by the
actually,
way, that was the exact situation Cooper Rush faced when he faced the Eagles in the
boy, did
first game. If everybody
Ooh,
remembered, it was literally 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 every time he dropped
yeah,
back to
he
Right,
pass.
right.
struggled. He
Yeah,
struggled.
yeah, Adam.
But I learned this actually, Greg, sitting with you. Jaws would say that you want to get the quarterback into rhythm, give him easy throws.
Yeah.
It's a mind thing, guys. It's a mind. You build the quarterback's confidence. And it's okay. I could play that one. I think I could handle the next one. Whereas Jeff, you said with Cooper Rush, he was awful against the Eagles, but there was a reason that they had a lot going on that was negative. He just couldn't complete passes, and it one thing leads to another for a backup quarterback who doesn't get a lot work with the ones. You need to build his confidence, and this quarterback position, man. Greg, I want to throw this back to you, Greg, and you know this from watching tape over the years. Could you tell? Well, actually, I know you can. Well, do you notice anything in particular when a guy mentally or just confidence-wise doesn't have it? Is it
Yeah.
because he gets off to a slow start? What do you see? Is it technical? What do you see?
Well, it's funny you say that because I just finished watching CJ Stroud, and
Oh yeah, yeah,
he's really struggling right now. And you
yeah.
can see that just by his body language when he drops, he's getting stuck in the pocket. He's not seeing it clearly, so he gets stuck. And then you can see by just the body movements, you start to see sort of freneticism. And you can see that when you watch tape, and that's when you know that a quarterback is just not seeing it clearly, and the mind and the body are not working together. No,
Mm.
you can absolutely see that on tape.
Let's not
And I will
minimize.
say this about Cooper Rush. Again,
Mhm.
who knows what's going to happen today? We don't know that. So, but Cooper Rush in the last couple of games has been extremely decisive in getting rid of the ball. And
Mm,
that's what coaches want. They want the quarterback to hit that back foot
Yep.
and go somewhere, not hit the back foot and feel like, okay, what do I do now?
right. Right. Let's not minimize the importance of this game, and really from an organizational standpoint, Adam, because the Eagles traded a 3rd-round pick for Kenny Pickett. They were trading for the guy that we know Howie Roseman really liked coming out of Pitt, also was not in a position at the time to draft nor need to draft. But we know Howie Roseman liked him, and this is not a 1-year sign Gardner Minshew for the veteran. This is you traded a 3rd-round pick, and we're putting you in an offense that has AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and one of the best offensive lines, and by the way, potentially the league MVP at running back. So there needs to be a good showing here
Yeah.
from the organization that they did the right thing to give up a 3rd-round pick for Kenny Pickett.
And they're committed to him next year. He's on a contract for 2025. So yeah, he's going to be the backup. That's why they made the trade. And look, the Eagles, there's a lot we like about the Eagles, the value they put on the defense and offensive line in particular, but they also put a value into the backup quarterback. They don't always get it right, but no one did it better in 2017, obviously, than Nick Foles.
Right.
So they get it. And Kenny Pickett, well, hey, we don't need to debate whether Kenny Pickett should have been a first-round pick. That's over and done with. Like that draft has happened. It is what it is with the Steelers. But the Eagles had a high grade on him.
Mhm.
Particularly the general manager really liked him. And they got their guy here. And this is it. You talked about it. Okay, now they're going to get some tape. They have the relief tape coming off the bench. Sudden change. You got to come off the bench and man it and did a fairly decent job. But now you got to start in a game. By the way, that means something. It does have something on the line.
Yeah, and I'll say this to close it off on Kenny Pickett. I don't think he has to be astronomically better than he was last week against Washington. I just think you got to make sure you don't turn the ball over. If your running game is better, if you're able to, if you're a little bit more on target with your passes, he was a little off last week, which you would expect going in cold. His ball placement wasn't good. If he's 25% better with his ball placement and accuracy and his decision making, and he doesn't turn the ball over, then I think the Eagles against this Dallas Cowboys defense will be in good shape. But Greg, this Cowboys defense at times has really struggled to stop the run. At times has been carved up in the past. Lately, more recently, what are you seeing from Mike Zimmer and what he's been trying to do?
You know, the run stuff is really, I struggle with that because they've got pretty good people. I know that Lawrence is out, but I don't think that their front is bad.
Hmm.
They play a lot of guys too. They have an eight-man D-line rotation, eight guys getting meaningful snaps, including our old friend Linville Joseph. Um, you know, um, I think that two guys who I think have played pretty well. I mean, let's put Parsons aside. We know about Parsons. But I think two guys who've played pretty well are Golston and Odigizua.
Hmm.
I mean, Golston has kind of become an intriguing player for them because he plays both inside and outside. And I think again, he's not an all-pro, but I think he's become a solid player. The linebacker position has become really interesting with who they're playing. I mean, what has happened to Damone Clark? Because last year he literally started every game, and I don't think he's injured.
Hmm.
He's not. Yeah, he's not.
So I mean, with all the injuries they've had, I mean, last week they started, the draft pick Liufa from Notre Dame and Vigil, who's been around the league, and they played almost every snap.
Hmm.
So, obviously they feel that their linebacker position up to this point has not been good at all. Now, Overshone got hurt. He's done for the year with, unfortunately, a really serious injury. And who knows, what his status will be if he can come back. But that was a guy that had speed, that had juice. I mean, he was sort of a modern day linebacker in that he wasn't big, but he could run. He had range. He made those kinds of plays that stood out, that flashed. So
Hmm.
now they're playing with essentially backups.
Hmm. Greg, when you looked at the running game struggles last week for the Eagles, after starting off with a really nice Saquon Barkley run, we talked about Uzama, Calcaterra. Was it just a case in your mind of they were out physical, they were outclassed in the trenches by a Washington team that was really coming after them?
Is that oh, that's a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
Did
didn't
you?
realize
What? In other words,
you.
we could say this guy just missed a block because he was out of position or he didn't use his hands or did because I
Well, I
thought
think
Calcaterra has been improving until last
right.
week. It was almost a step
Well, we don't
back.
want to put the whole thing on Calcaterra. I mean,
No,
did
no,
he
no,
miss
no,
a few
no.
blocks? Of course. Lane Johnson missed a few blocks. I think when you don't run the ball well, it's always multiple reasons. And I try to explain that to people about everything with football. There's always multiple reasons. Very often fans want it to be one thing, but
Yeah.
there's always multiple reasons. Just like there's many ways to win and there's many reasons why teams lose. I would say that everything you said is true. There were individual breakdowns,
Hmm.
one-on-one breakdowns, and then there were times they were physically handled. And I thought they struggled to deal with Luvu and Wagner being really aggressive attacking gaps. Those guys were really impressive in that game. You guys know how I feel about Frankie Luvu. I think he's one of the
Yeah.
top three or four most complete linebackers in the league. And Wagner's just a pro's pro, even though he's not the same physically that he was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but he knows how to play football. So yeah, there were times they were out physical, and there were times guys were beaten with individual blocks.
Hmm. All right. So look for a bounce back game there. And last thing, Deron Bland. I think he was a first team All Pro last year. But Greg, you've always said that you felt he played a certain style of way, a squatter type of cornerback. How
He
has his
is.
year been this year compared in comparison?
He's an off coverage corner for the most part. He's a beatable corner. And again, I don't want people to think the guy stinks and shouldn't be out there. But he had all those interceptions last year. Almost all of them came in a certain way, just like you said. He's a squatter and a keyer and a cluer, and he
Hmm.
would just plan and drive on balls in front of him. That he's very good at. But he's not really a press corner, and you can beat him. He doesn't have great speed. So I don't think that A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith would be concerned about him, when they go up against him. He's good corner, but nothing. you nothing. You go, oh my God, this guy's really good, really
Yeah.
special. He's not that guy.
Yeah, this is the guy that Adam, when you're drawing it up, you want to early on, you want to slant, 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 then sluggo late, right? You catch him sort of looking in the backfield and try to
You
run past
know,
him and get one.
the one thing, and Adam knows this, for years and years. I mean, I worked my tail off watching a ton of guys, NFL, college, and I don't think I necessarily know more than anybody else. That's not my point.
Sure.
But there's one thing I always hear about corners that make interceptions, and the guy who just popped into my head was Emmanuel Forbes. Okay,
Mm.
first round pick, basically been benched. He was cut. I don't even know what team he's on now. Um, and so many people said, "Oh, he's going to be good because you know what? He just finds the ball. He's around the ball because he had a lot of interceptions in college." And I watched all those interceptions, and I'm thinking to myself, "Well, the quarterback threw the ball right to him. Where else would you expect him to be?" I mean, and I'm thinking to myself, that's not going to make him a good NFL corner. When people say he's around the ball, that's where corners are supposed to be when they're covering
Yeah.
someone. You know, so, and of course it hasn't worked out up to this point, which again doesn't make me smarter, better, right? But that is not just because Bland had a lot of picks and he's really good at
Sure.
that. There's
Sure.
no question he's a plant and drive keyer,
Hmm.
but that doesn't automatically make him Patrick Surtain because he's not.
Right.
Jeff, remember we talked about Anthony Harris, right? Now he played different position with safety when he came over
Hmm.
from Minnesota.
He had seven
And
or eight interceptions one year,
right.
remember, in
Yep.
The,
Minnesota?
the word was it was you hate to say luck, but it was more right guy at the right place rather
Right.
than he played
Surrounded by all pro players
right.
everywhere. Yeah.
Rather than CJ Gardner Johnson had a knack. Greg's talked about it and shown us and told us about he's got great field vision. Like he has this innate sense to know how to track the football. But when you look at this, we're going to talk about we just talked about Kalen Carson, who's going to have to play today. They're running out of corners. Now, depending on how Pickett's ribs are, when he drops back, you would think they're going to have some luck in this game.
Hmm.
Now, I know their defense is playing better, and you always have to worry about Carson, the Parsons. Like that's the Parsons factor. You
You're
got to
right.
account for him. You got to have a plan for him. Obviously, they have a plan for him. But when he drops back, if he's protected, there's going to be opportunities. There's no question about that.
All right. Let us move over to the Eagles defense now against this Cowboy offense, which was just an absolute train wreck for a little while early in the season when Cooper Rush had to take over. Well, it was a train wreck even when Dak Prescott was quarterback. Then Cooper Rush took over, run into a buzzsaw in his first game against the Eagles, but gradually gotten better. Greg, this is a guy who has had to play multiple games in a season before and has played
Yeah,
well. In fact, I think he
yeah.
was 4-0 a couple of years ago when he had to take over until he played the Eagles and the Eagles won that game, but that was even a seesaw battle. So he's decisive, he's quick, he knows the offense. So they've been able to win with him being that way.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people also don't factor into talking about quarterbacks is how important what a coaching staff does with quarterbacks. Because like we were saying, before about if quarterbacks, well, that's where the coaching staff comes in. You know, Cooper Rush is not going to go out there and make Josh Allen plays, okay? There's very few guys who are going to do that. So now as a coaching staff, you have to help him out with what you do, okay? I'll give you a very quick example. The team that runs the most outside zone in the NFL are the Atlanta Falcons. So what do they do with Michael Penix this week? Because of course, all everybody wants to talk about is Michael Penix. They built their passing game off outside zone with play action boot. That's helping your quarterback.
Sure.
Okay. So what the Cowboys do and do an excellent job of is there's a lot of different personnel groupings. They deploy a lot of shifts and motions. They have a ton of formation looks. They give a defense a lot to deal with throughout a game. That helps your quarterback,
Hmm.
because now the defense is a little more reactive than proactive. So, those are the things the Cowboys have been doing really well. I know Brian Schottenheimer is down there as the OC, and Brian's really good. People may remember that, and Adam, you'll remember this for
Oh yeah,
sure,
I
that
know.
Russell Wilson was having his absolute best season with Seattle when Brian Schottenheimer was there, and then Pete Carroll wanted to change and run the football because that's Pete Carroll. And again, I'm not knocking Pete Carroll. I'm trying to make the point that Brian Schottenheimer is really good at this, and he's been doing it for a long time.
Mm. Greg, Jake Ferguson at one point, maybe last year, he was such
Yeah.
a central piece of their offense, and they're going to be without CeeDee Lamb, but it really hasn't been a Jake Ferguson type year as far as
No.
what he did last year. Are they playing Luke Schoonmaker more? Is it just a different kind of offense because the quarterback is different?
I mean, I think it's different because the quarterback's different. I mean, quarterbacks tend to throw to certain guys more than others. I don't look, Jake Ferguson is a good player in my opinion, and in any
Mm.
given week he can be a factor in the game. You mentioned the fact that Lamb is going to be out, so there's other receivers. Ryan Flournoy at the end of last week started catching passes. I did not evaluate him coming out of college. I don't believe I did as a small college guy. Maybe I did. I'd have to check. But obviously they've got Tolbert, they've got Cooks, they've got Flournoy now. I know I'm missing. Oh, they got Turpin who can run. You got to be careful about him. He's
Yep.
one of those guys that has, a little bit of that speed that's close to terrifying. You got to be a little careful.
You know who's also going to play, and he did play late last week, is Jonathan Mingo. So
Yeah.
Mingo's going to be on the field.
Boy, and
Yeah,
I loved Mingo coming out. I
I
don't know
know.
what the deal is with
So
Mingo.
do the Panthers. You want to know what? It's body beautiful. He doesn't play to his size. That's the word
Yeah.
from the Panthers. He didn't apply himself, and they got frustrated with him.
Yeah, which I don't know when I'm watching a
Yeah.
guy on tape, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and his college shape was very intriguing. Greg, you're
Oh
not
my God,
about
was it
that.
intriguing. Well,
Well,
by the way, what year did Flournoy come out?
this year,
This year,
he's a rookie.
Yeah,
He's a rookie?
He is a
yes.
rookie. Yep.
I don't think you saw his college. I don't
He
think you did
was
his
he
tape.
was at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, and seemed to
I
show
don't
up
think
pretty
I
well
did his
there.
college
Yeah.
tape though.
No, because I asked you because I said the
I did
Cowboys
not.
have this
I
kid.
did
Yeah,
not.
he wasn't really in the rotation.
Yeah.
But Jalen Tolbert's gonna play a lot, and he's
Yeah.
a guy who's come on as their third receiver. But Turpin is that wild card, man. I'm
The
telling
wild
you.
card because he can
Yep.
run.
Yep.
And he's
Yep.
kind of a movable chess piece. He's
Mhm.
everywhere. He's a motion guy.
Yep.
They do a lot with motions and shifts. I mean, again, every team has a plan for that. We'll see.
Uh, I would think, obviously they're going to try to get Rico Dowdle. That he's the central point of their rushing attack now. For Vic Fangio, Greg, it seems like in games where he feels that the opponent doesn't have too much of vertical stress, or maybe one guy that they have to worry about, he'll go more from, he'll start off too high. He'll play a little bit more cover one, a little bit more man defense. So I would think that Vic would do that, and also probably maybe just throw mostly four-man pressures, but use a lot of sims just to see if he can
Right.
kind of take advantage of the fact that the center and the right guard are both rookies.
Yeah, and I think Hoffman struggled last week in one-on-one pass protection. So I
Mhm.
think they'll try to go after him. Carter will line up on him, and they'll see if that forces the center to slide to Carter, which most teams do, by the way. So we'll see if that's the case. But Hoffman clearly struggled against the Bucks. So yeah, I mean, I would think the four-man pressure. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Burks, with Nakobe Dean, not playing because Dean was a big, was used as a fourth rusher in a lot of their four-man sim pressure. So I don't know if they see Burks as that guy. We know Dean's always been a good blitzer going back to his days at Georgia. There's a knack to that. Not everybody is just automatically a good blitzer.
One more thing, the Cowboys, because of Tyler Guyton's had like 4 different injuries, so they keep starting Chuma Adogo, who's really a backup left tackle, right tackle. And Adogo also started last week, and then Guyton came in for like 7 snaps.
7 snaps.
Yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do today because that's a matchup you can exploit.
And Guyton has not, he's been very up and down when he's played this year.
And this is a new position for him, left tackle. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens.
And I loved his pure athletic traits. He was a right tackle in college.
Yep.
Only had 14 snaps in his college career. I thought he and Marius Mims were the two most physically gifted tackle prospects, just physical gifts. Mims has really started much of this season and done okay in Cincinnati, but Guyton is not really ready to play yet. And they asked him to make a position change after 14 college starts, and he was really up and down.
By the way, you said he played 7 snaps last. That wasn't 7 snaps and you're out, right? Was that like on certain packages?
No.
Okay.
Udoga started.
Okay,
Yes.
so he'll
Yeah.
come in maybe when they want a goal line package or a 3rd and 1, or they want maybe get a little.
Honestly, that's the question. And the reason why I brought this up is because they're now out of the playoffs. Do you go back to the kid, let him he needs snaps because this is a new position for him, as Greg said. He only had 14 starts in college,
Mm-hmm.
and you're asking to change positions. This is the perfect time for developmental snaps for the next 2 games, the final 2 games of the season.
Yeah.
Adoga he has no chance to ever be a full-time starter. He's a backup. I remember talking to the Jets about him. They knew what he was when they had him. This guy's a backup. So why would you not play Guyton today and just take your chances?
They also started a rookie at center. Nice player, Cooper Beebe. I did him coming
Hmm.
out of college. He was a guard in college, although he played a bunch of positions. He did play some center in college. So, I think that's an area in which the Eagles, will look to attack. Will work, maybe with some stunts, try to create some one-on-ones. Obviously, Carter can beat anybody. So I think that's an area that they have to win in that area.
There's no question that, especially coming off last week's game against Washington, where you didn't really see the pressure, especially the edge pressure that the Eagles ordinarily get, that in a game like this, with everything on the line against this Cowboys offensive line that has not been great all year and is dealing with injuries, if we're doing the post game, Adam, and we're talking about you didn't really hear Josh Sweat's name very much,
Yeah.
or you didn't really hear, Nolan Smith's name for 2 straight weeks, that's not a great sign going for. That would be one of those. Did we see any long-term issues in that loss to Washington? And we felt not
Right.
really.
Right.
That would be
Right.
that would to me to be problematic if they can't get some edge pressure and some
Well, but
four-man pressure.
you say that, but here's the thing about the game last week for the Cowboys. The Bucs didn't have a turnover or a sack.
Hmm.
Okay. And Greg talked about earlier, Cooper Rush played really well.
Right.
The Cooper Rush you saw early this season against Eagles was horrendous. That's not the same guy right now. He's playing really good football. And they're getting it out. He's playing on time. It's working. I know CeeDee Lamb not there is obviously a factor. We're gonna see they have life without CD starts today. They haven't had to have that issue. CD's been
Right.
durable. He's been playing with this nagging shoulder issue, and now they're out of the playoffs to shut him down. So it's obviously going to be tougher for them. But I'm curious to see after a game you just mentioned with Eagles, just the defense just for whatever reason didn't have it. Sweat missed a lot of snaps. He should be okay. Let's see what happens and what their game plan is because we just outlined the problems that the Cowboys have on their offensive line, and it didn't
Hmm.
happen last week. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, if we're talking about after the game, they did not get good edge pressure, or they
Yep.
did. The ball got out quickly, and little plays turned into big ones. Then we're talking about tackling, which I'd be surprised. I think the Eagles have tackled pretty
I,
well over since week 4.
I remember it's just ironic how things work out. So I remember talking to Paul Gunther, who's now with the Cowboys, right? I talked to Paul some years ago about facing Cooper Rush. And Rush had a great game against the Vikings when Paul and Zimmer with the Vikings. And I said, "What
I
happened?" He goes, "We
remember
couldn't
that.
get
I
to him."
remember that.
Paul said he got rid of it. They protected him, and we just couldn't get to him. Well, this brings up to your point. We'll send it back to you. The guy can make throws if you don't pressure him.
Hmm.
And I know Vic doesn't. He blitzed more than he likes to last week. Vic talked about it. If I can't get there with 4, I have to blitz.
Well, that's the way defensive coordinators
Yep.
think. If you
And
got to
we'll see
impact the
today.
quarterback,
Guess what? That's coming if they can't get home. I would be surprised as we throw it back to you, Jeff, based on the way we outline the Cowboys offensive line. I know the Bucs can get it done. I'd be very surprised if the Eagles can't.
I'd be shocked, especially without CeeDee Lamb, because he's a great safety valve if a team is going to come after you, who can make some plays for you. And now you have to rely on a veteran in Brandon Cooks and young kid in Tolbert, who are fine, but they're not CeeDee Lamb by
Yeah.
any stretch of the means. So to me, it sort of opens up the door for the Eagles' four-man pressure to really take over this game, and it should. So as we transition away from that, we will get into our picks. We'll pick the winner of
oh
this
boy.
game. We'll get our game player of the game picks in as well. And Greg, I'm going to start with you because I know you've spent at least, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 seconds thinking about this pick and the player of the game.
I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley this week because I think they're going to refocus, and not just because Jalen Hurts is out. I think they would have done that anyway. I think they're going to refocus. I think the O-line probably has a chip on its shoulder this week. We've all been at training camp. We know that Jeff Stoutland sometimes can, be a little prickly in a good way, and I'm sure that this week was one of those weeks. Adam, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Jeff knows because you hear him barking. I call it barking. It's actually
Yeah.
very funny, to be honest with you. The stuff that
I
he
mean,
said.
the guy's a great coach. What I said is
Yeah.
a compliment, really.
Yeah.
Oh,
His
yeah, yeah,
Not
phrases,
on him at all.
Greg, his
Um,
phrases are hilarious. But go ahead. So finish
Yeah,
off.
so I just think that even though I do believe, Jeff, that you're correct, that they will try to get Pickett in rhythm early, I think when all's said and done, this is going to be, and this is just the nature of football, this is going to be a manhood game for the offensive line, and it's going to be presented that way all week. Just walking in the halls, if Coach Stout walks by an all lineman, he's going to say something that makes it clear that, hey, this is a manhood game. you know, and I just feel that, it's going to be a Barkley game because of that. And plus, they would love to get him the record. I'm not saying they're going to get it this week because I think it's
Yeah,
268 or something like that.
Mhm.
yeah.
But I think they'd love to do that.
I think they
It's a
would
manhood
too.
game. There's a line that you and Jaws used to use, but I won't say it because
Yes, yeah, we
Yeah.
won't use that. Yeah.
Family show,
you
Adam.
know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I
Plank
know
in the
exactly
dirt
what you're
game.
talking about.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love that line. But
Wait,
so
just for
mine would.
posterity, I think I need. Greg, did you say? I didn't hear. I heard you say
Oh yeah.
Saquon Barkley. Did you give an actual
Oh
score?
no, I didn't give a
Go
score.
ahead. Sorry.
This show is not complete if you don't give a
No,
score,
I know. I
Greg. I
know
mean, that's all
people are
people
hanging
want to
on my
hear.
score.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna go 24-16.
All right.
Eagles.
Okay.
Okay, Adam, your turn.
All right. So I can't take the Eagles' whole offensive line because I was thinking the same way Greg was. So I'm gonna surprise you here. I'm gonna go defense. And this guy has had a nice year after a really bad start. Didn't have a good training camp. And the reason why I'm going to pick Nolan Smith is because some way or one way or another, they're going to have success against this offensive line. I can't believe that they held up against Todd Bowles last week. You talk about a manhood game. The Eagles defense didn't play well last week. Okay, we all know that they're very disappointing. Daniels is a really talented young quarterback, but my God, they just couldn't touch him. I feel like this is a manhood defensive game, and Nolan Smith, who's come on, we've been hard on him, rightfully so, because he earned it to start the season. He was awful the last 2 months. I mean, he's played really well,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a factor. And I'm going to say, you know what? Let's see what happens. Because problem is Josh Sweat with the ankle. I don't know how effective he's going to be.
All right. The
Well, and
score is
plus,
what?
just to amplify your point, Adam, he's going to be going against Terrence Steele, who is very up and down as a right tackle. He's a beatable right tackle.
There you go.
What's the score?
Oh, I've got it 23-13 Eagles.
All right. Eagles 23, Cowboys 13. By the way, the Eagles are 8-point favorites in this game. I kind of see an Eagles blowout, fellas. I think the Eagles are going to win 33-17.
Ah,
Offensively, they will be able to do what they want and dictate against the Cowboys. And offensively for the Cowboys, without CeeDee Lamb and with their offensive line issues, I just don't think that they can keep pace with what the Eagles can do. So I picked the Eagles to win 33-17. Zach Bond, player of the game, see like 13 tackles, 2 sacks, perhaps a forced fumble. I think
Wow.
he's going to be highly involved in the sim pressure game for Vic Fangio. So
Okay.
that's it. We got all of us taking the Eagles to win, and then we'll see what happens. Of course, stay tuned for Inside the Birds post-game live. Myself, Adam Caplan, after the show. Well, that's going to do it for this show. Thanks to Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan. I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching the Inside the Birds pregame show. Catch you on the next one.